Please excuse my filming situation. There's a lot going on. I'll explain in the conclusion, but come along with me. I'm going to teach you how to make this apple crisp sourdough loaf. It's got a cinnamon swirl in the middle with some apple pie spices added. Apple chips or freeze-dried apple, whichever you prefer, goes in the swirl, and it softens while it bakes to become like this apple pie, apple crisp situation in the middle. We have the crumble topping, which adds this crunchy texture to the whole thing. There's apple cider in the dough. We boil it first to really condense the flavor. Oh my gosh, just come along with me. Let me teach you how to make this bread.
Step one, as always, is feeding our starter so it's ready and active in time to make our loaf. To do this, we need 12 grams of a healthy starter mixed with 60 grams of water and 60 grams of bread flour. This is a 1:5:5 feeding ratio and should be peaked and ready to use in the morning. If you prefer a different feeding ratio, no problem. We just need 120 grams total for this recipe. When we wake up in the morning, we're gonna boil down some apple cider, 150 grams in a saucepan, boil it for about 4 to 5 minutes, and we only need 60 grams of this for our dough. When you're reducing the apple cider, weigh it in your saucepan. That way you can check the weight while you reduce it to make sure that you're left with at least 60 grams. Then we're gonna shred our medium green apple. The whole apple is about 140 grams, and then after we shred it, we're left with about 100 grams. Put those 100 grams of apple shreds in a stand mixer bowl or a glass bowl if you're mixing by hand. Add to that 210 grams of water and our 60 grams of reduced apple cider. I took the temperature just to make sure that the apple cider was cooled down enough before I added my sourdough starter. This is a starter we fed the night before. We need 120 grams of it. Then we'll add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, that's optional, half a teaspoon of cinnamon. For the rest of the spices, you can sub apple pie spice or pumpkin pie spice, or you can follow my directions of the listed out singular spices. It's totally up to you. Then we need 500 grams of bread flour and 10 grams of salt. The bread flour I'm using here is the Central Milling ABC flour. If you're using a higher protein bread flour, you might consider adding a splash of water during the mixing, but I provided this footage here so that you can double check your dough's texture. All we're doing in the stand mixer is mixing it for 3 to 4 minutes or until all the ingredients are combined. If you're doing this by hand, same thing, just use a Danish dough whisk in a bowl. Then we're gonna cover it and let it sit for half an hour. And in the meantime, this is when I would normally feed my starter. So I just wanted to show that the little bits left in the jar, I gave it a feeding and I set it on my counter just to stay healthy. Then after the 30-minute rest, we're gonna come back and do our first round of stretch and folds. You'll notice that the dough is a lot smoother. It's definitely not all the way there yet. We've got some more dough strengthening to do, but that resting really allowed it to relax. And I go around the bowl once, and then I go around again just until the dough starts to resist me and it doesn't want to be stretched anymore. And I'll cover it and let it rest again before coming back for the next round of stretch and folds. Here we are for round 2. Again, I'm just waiting 30 to 45 minutes between each round of stretch and folds, and just patting it out so it kind of maintains that square shape in this baking dish. Here's the third round of stretch and folds. I've got a window pane now. The dough is getting nice and strong. So I'm gonna come back after the last 30-minute rest and just do some very gentle coil folds, just lifting the dough from the center and draping it down on top of itself. Then this is gonna rest on the counter until the bulk fermentation is done. For me, it took about 5.5 hours when my dough was 75 degrees Fahrenheit or 23.8 degrees Celsius. I don't watch the clock though. I'm looking at my dough for signs that it's ready. It'll be nice and jiggly. If I pull at the side of the bowl, I see some gluten strands forming under the surface, and it's very aerated when I touch it. So at that time, I go ahead and create my filling. When I make the filling, I just dump all the ingredients in the bowl. There is a preferred order to do this. I'm not doing it in the video, but it's on the recipe card. It would be faster if you mixed the sugar and the spices and the flour together first and then added the butter. I just did it backwards. So it took me like an extra minute or two. But either way, you're just putting all your filling ingredients in the bowl and then mixing them together until it's a spreadable mixture. If yours isn't spreadable for any reason, just pop it in the microwave for 5 to 10 seconds and it should be good to go. Flour your surface, and we're gonna dump out our dough that has finished its bulk fermentation. It's nice and puffy and aerated and ready for shaping. I stretch it out until, I don't ever really measure it. I think I did actually measure it for the blog post. Let me check. Okay, it was 12 inches wide by 11 inches long, but you don't have to measure it if you don't want to. Anyway, we spread half of our cinnamon sugar filling evenly across the dough, leaving a gap on all the edges, and then crush up half of your apple chips or freeze-dried apples, which is about 20 grams worth, and sprinkle it on top of that cinnamon spread. For the shaping, we fold each of the outside edges to the center and kind of pinch that center seam closed, pinch the edges to make sure no filling comes out. I dimple it to disperse any large bubbles and kind of stretch it out a tiny bit. This is optional. The more that I do this, the more I find these little tricks that sometimes make the smallest improvements. And then we're gonna spread the remainder of our cinnamon sugar filling on top, leaving just a small gap on the edges, and then crunching up the rest of our dried apple chips or freeze-dried apples on top. That's optional. These apple chips don't stay crunchy. They actually soften during baking to create like this apple pie filling. It's really delicious, but you don't need it. It doesn't make or break this dough. And we're gonna roll up our dough log, pinching the seam on the edges so that nothing falls out. And there it is, our beautiful dough log. Give yourself a pat on the back if you make it through this. This is a more advanced shaping technique, but I'm hoping this video and all the pictures and things helps you, give you the confidence to do it, because it's really easy once you kind of get the hang of it. All right, for the banneton, I like wood pulp bannetons, but in order to not ruin them in case any filling leaks out, I line it first with a flour sack towel. That's optional, do whatever you like. And then I just fold the towel over it and stick this in the fridge overnight. This is my dedicated messy towel. It is clean, okay? Don't judge me. Anyway, this is the next day. Our dough has been cold proofing in the fridge overnight. I take a little piece of parchment paper and crumple it up to soften it, and then run it under water just to inject some extra steam into the Dutch oven. That's all optional. Then with a sharp bread lom or a razor blade or a serrated knife, do one single score down the center. That area is gonna open up and give us a spot to add our crumble to press on, which is optional, but I highly recommend it. It's delicious. So to make the crumble, we need 23 grams of bread flour and 23 grams of brown sugar. To that, we're gonna add 12 grams of old-fashioned rolled oats and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. If you want, you can also add some pumpkin pie spice, or I just add a pinch of nutmeg to keep things simple. A pinch of salt, you gotta have salt to kind of counteract the sweetness, and then 17 grams of cold butter. I find that just using my fingers and pinching this in until the butter is totally coated by this mixture is the easiest. And then I add a tiny bit of apple cider just to get rid of any floury bits and make this mixture come together a little bit more, which makes it easier to press on top of our bread. Fair warning, the crumble does crumble off when you slice your baked loaf, but we just take those crumbly pieces and put them on top of the bread when it's buttered. It's so good. Here I'm just checking to make sure that the bread internally is cooked all the way through. We're looking for 205 to 210 degrees Fahrenheit when it's all said and done. If it's starting to burn a little bit, just tent it with foil or recover it with your Dutch oven lid. That's what I did. Here's the center. It's so delicious. That swirl's so beautiful. And cutting this loaf is a little messy. There's a lot going on, but it's worth it. It's so delicious. Buttering this and then sprinkling on those crumbly bits. Oh my gosh, it's heaven on earth. If you make this, please let me know how it goes in the comments below. There's tons of tips and photos and videos in the recipe post too.
So this is the reality of my YouTube filming situation today. My 3-year-old is homesick from school. He is occupying himself on YouTube Kids right now. You could probably hear it in the background, but I can't film in my kitchen. And you know, I'd rather put something out there that's not perfect than post nothing at all. So here is what the apple crisp sourdough bread looks like on the inside. I filmed the cutting of it without my face on camera. I know I get a lot of comments. It's like, we want you to talk to camera. We don't want overhead shots, but sometimes I just can't do that because of my family. But anyway, here's what it looks like. This loaf is like pure decadence. It's a little messy, but I'm okay with that. The flavor and like the texture that you get, the crumble on the top, it does fall off when you cut the loaf. I've tried every trick in the book. I have tried doing an egg wash on top and then sticking the crumble on, but the loaf is so hot that the egg wash starts to cook and then you have like little bits of scrambled egg under your crumble. It is no good. I have gotten suggestions to try putting the crumble in the banneton and then you put your dough on top for the cold proof, but the problem with that is the crumble has sugars in it that would liquefy, so it would become a soupy, sticky, leaky mess. So I've just embraced the crumble and we actually really enjoy the little pieces that fall off. We take our slice and we butter it, and then on top of the butter we sprinkle the crumble bits that fell off while we sliced it, and it is divine. If you're not a fan of the crumble kind of crumbling off, of course you can just skip it altogether and it's not needed. But I really like that texture component to this, and it's just so beautiful. The hardest, I shouldn't say hardest, the most common troubleshooting issue that will come up with this loaf is baking it all the way through. So I highly, highly recommend using a thermometer probe, like a temperature probe, when your loaf is done baking after you follow my baking instructions, because if it is not at least 200 degrees, ideally 205 degrees internally, you might have gummy spots around the swirl. It's a common error, not even error, it's just a common thing that happens. And any sweet loaf that has added sugars to it is going to take longer to bake. There's some science that goes into that, but I don't know it like deeply enough in me to like say it back to you in a smart sounding way. I'd have to go reference a book. Maybe I'll put some information about that in the description below. But sugary sweet loaves are more difficult. It's not just you, they are more difficult. But checking the temperature internally will make sure that it is perfectly cooked all the way through. It's so good. So I don't have any butter in this corner, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and taste test this. And these little bits, go on. Okay, I'm done chewing. There's so much going on in here. There's so many amazing components. We have the cinnamon swirl that also has some apple pie spices in it. We have the apple chips, or you can do freeze-dried apples. That's also layered on top of the swirl, and those soften while they're baking. They kind of absorb some of that sugar that tends to liquefy, and it becomes like an apple crisp or apple pie filling. It's so good. Of course, we have the crumble on top. In the dough, we have apple cider that's been boiled down on the stove, so it's a really concentrated apple flavor. This loaf, like, I just don't even know what else you could pack into this loaf to make it like a showstopper. It's more work. This is not like a weekly sourdough loaf. This is like it's Thanksgiving and I am bringing a loaf to impress. So let's taste test. It's an apple crisp and a sourdough bread loaf. My God. It's delicious. It's got sweetness to it, clearly from the swirl, but the dough itself is not super sweet. So it's this perfect balance of a sourdough dough that's slightly sweetened from the condensed apple cider, but mostly sweetened from the swirl. And together, it comes together to just be like that just right sweetness. Not too sweet, not too sour. And all of the textures going on, you have like the softened apples, the apple chips that softened in the middle. The swirl has its own texture. The bread is nice and chewy. The crust is crispy. What more could you ask for? Oh my gosh, delish. If you make this loaf, drop a comment in the description below. Not in the description, drop a comment in the comment section below. And on my recipe post on my blog, I would love to hear from you. There's a comment section there after the conclusion at the very bottom where you can upload photos of your bake, leave a review. If you run into any major issues and you're stumped, you can always email me. I help troubleshoot via email all the time. Anyway, I answer emails on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have a time slot on Tuesday and Thursday where I just focus on answering troubleshooting emails. I don't always get through them all, so sometimes it might be, you might email me on Monday and maybe you don't hear back from me until Thursday or the following Tuesday. But I will get back to you. I will, I promise. So I really hope you make this loaf. It is the perfect autumn, fall-inspired apple loaf. And it's got a lot going on. I think it will really impress the people in your life. Happy baking, everybody.